There we go. So good evening, a cold winter's evening here. The sun's just going down, and Pamela and I have just had a nice warm-up little chat, and it was quite fun. So she's going to speak to us a little bit about flourishing and some more. I don't know, it's going to be new for me as well.
Yeah.
So I'll I just want to say that, I'm Wendy Ann Smith, because people often tell me I don't introduce myself with my name. And I'm the founder of the Coaching Ethics Forum, and we're running a series of webinars this year, almost every month. So we hope you enjoy them. And today we've got Pamela. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Pamela, and run away with it, you'll be able to share your slides, etc.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Wendy Ann. This is a topic I'm really excited about. This will be the first audience that has an opportunity to see some of this angle, I guess, of joy that I'll be talking about. And so I am a professor of leadership at Anderson University, and within that program, I teach in the doctoral program and work with students on their research and their dissertation. So qualitative research is near and dear to my heart. It's the kind of research that grounds this work around joy. I'm also the director of education at the Institute of Coaching, and been there for about 3 or 4 years, probably 4 years now. And I am the founder and president of the Academy of Creative Coaching, which is a coach certification school. And we've been around for about 12 years now. So been there. So that's who I am. And I can go ahead and get started and share my screen here. Let me. So here we go. Lots of colors, lots of vivid energy going on here. And this is intentional because I know here in the United States, and by the way, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and not only in the United States, but in the southern part of the United States, where there's just a lot of um, political tension, happening. And so I really wanted to uh, acknowledge some of the things that people are struggling with in this interesting political era. Though this presentation will not be political, it will hopefully offer some tools that can help us as coaches um, cope with our own struggles and thought processes, but also being able to be useful for the people that we work with. So this is called Plot Twists and Coaching Joy, Fighting to Flourish Through Uncertain Times. So why the football player? So there is a reason for this, and it is part of my story. When I was at my athletic prime, I was in my late teens and early 20s. I was a college athlete. I played softball, basketball, volleyball, ran track. But my sport in college was softball. So that was the one that I focused mostly on. And through a series of interesting life events, I eventually had to quit the sport, even though in 96, I actually qualified for the Olympics. And I would have had an opportunity to possibly, play softball in the Olympics. But I never got an opportunity to do that. I never really finished my college eligibility years either. And so that never left me. The hunger to compete never left me. So that was my plot twist. My plot twist was I got pregnant after my freshman year of college. Now it was a beautiful blessing because I have a beautiful son from the experience, but that is what created that first big plot twist in my life. And so what did I do in response to that plot twist? Well, I actually rocked my life after that. Like, I really made sure that I was able to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue. I had to work harder than I normally would have, but it made me so much more resilient and aware. And so I wouldn't change it for a second. But what happened a few months ago is across my social media timeline, and here we are 20 something years later. I am now 48 years old. And I saw an opportunity to try out for Professional Women's Football League here in Atlanta. And by football, because I know this is an international audience, I'm referring to the American style football with the weird shaped ball and, and tackle, full contact. And I tried out for the team, and lo and behold, I made the team.
Congratulations. That's brilliant. I love
Thank
that
you.
story.
So that was my plot twist. And what I did with that plot twist in my 20s is that I created a series of counter plot twists that enabled me to push forward and still live out the person that I've always wanted to be. So that's my story. That's my plot twist. And as I go through this, I want you all to think about what kinds of plot twists you have had in your life. And then what kind of counter plot twist did you create? Because sometimes those plot twists don't come to us because we want them to. Oftentimes they come to us, they blindside us, they catch us off guard, and then we have an opportunity to decide how we're going to respond. So today, what I want to do is I want to talk about this idea of uncertainty and fear and what that does to us. And I also want to look at what trauma-informed coaching is. I know this is a really delicate conversation in coaching circles. And so I want to look at it from the standpoint of what this might mean for us as we are working to help people through their own plot twists that they experience. So, I'm sorry, I lost my screen. Where's my screen? There it is. Okay, I have too many windows open. And then I want to talk about the role of coaching in facilitating joy resilience. Joy resilience is a term that I coined in my book, Joyfully Single. And it's just a part of the work that I've done that really looks at how people overcome struggle and hard times using joy as a vehicle for energizing them, giving them life and spirit that they need in order to pull through some of those situations. So one thing that I would love for you all to think about is, what is one unexpected plot twist in your life that led to growth? And just again, thinking about what that means for you and in your personal journey. Hopefully what we talk about today will have context as it pertains to that. So moving forward, I'd like to begin by defining joy. I initially had this a little bit further down in the presentation, but I thought, you know what, let me just bring that out right now. Let's just get clear on it. And one thing about social science is that definitions are contextual, they can be debated. They might have different meaning for different cultures. So I want us to not have such a rigid idea of what we think joy might be. But here is two places where I draw my definition of joy. The first is the American Psychological Association, and they define joy as a feeling of extreme gladness, delight, and I love this part, exhilaration of the spirit. And that's where I find the energy comes. And it's arising from a sense of well-being or satisfaction. So for me, obviously, the standout points on this definition is exhilaration of the spirit and arising from a sense of well-being. That's important. So to that definition, based on my own research and my own scouring of the literature, I add to that definition that it is also an intentional approach to life that centers well-being through positive and negative experiences. So joy is not based on what's going on. It is something that we sometimes actually have to intentionally dive into to counter what's going on. So that is the idea of joy, that it is an exhilaration of the spirit that arises from well-being, and it can occur through both negative and positive experiences. So what's happiness? And I always get that question. What's the difference between happiness and joy? And so to compare the two, I don't like to create a hierarchy in terms of one being better than the other. They both have important functions. But happiness is our response to experiencing positive life events. People don't tend to be happy in the midst of really hard, scary, difficult events. It is a sense of contentment. I am content. I am at peace. I am at ease. I am calm. There's nothing threatening me right now. It is a natural reaction to the stimuli that gives us pleasure. It's kind of our reflex. But it also can be intentional and integrated into life practices. We've all, I'm sure, read books or heard of books that talk about keys to happiness and strategizing around happiness. So there are ways to be very strategic about bringing happiness into your life. And it just remember that for me, the distinction is that it is in response to what's going on. And it is really, for me, even bigger than that is that it is a sense of contentment that we have. Oh, and here we go. I jumped ahead of myself. So so for happiness, the difference is happiness lands on us. Its transformational impact happens from the outside in. Joy emerges from within us. It is transformational and it happens from the outside, from the inside out. And both can contribute to well-being, but both don't require well-being. So what I mean by that is that we can experience happy times by engaging in really toxic behaviors. We can have really horrible habits or things that are causing us harm and feel happy. And so the idea around joy is that joy is something that genuinely comes from our well-being. It springs from our well-being. So if we are experiencing genuine joy, the idea is that we are engaging in activities that are nurturing our well-being or the well-being of others. Now, we have seen, and I'll bring in the political context once again. We have seen situations, we're seeing it right now, where people are finding great joy in other people's pain. They're finding great joy in creating destruction in other people's lives. And that is a concept, or there's a word for it in the German language, which is Schadenfreude. And that is literally, the translation is finding joy in someone else's pain. So the question that always comes to me is, but is that actually joy? And what I have landed on is that this is what I call perceived joy. So it is what they perceive to be joy, but it's not genuine joy because it doesn't feed into well-being. So I just want to make sure we're clear on how I'm defining things here so that we have some context as we move forward. So from the work that I've done around joy, and this culminates from looking at people who've experienced trauma and have overcome their trauma and they've experienced what's called post-traumatic growth. People who have been motivated to achieve a goal after having different setbacks happen in their life. Being first in your family to go to college is one population I looked at very closely. Another one is looking at military families and how they adapted to their service member, loved one coming home after combat. And so that collection of studies was really primarily focused on how people overcome barriers. And I was often asked, how do these stories and these studies and these people's experiences come together? You're studying military folks, you're studying college students, you're studying people who've experienced trauma, people who've been through divorce. What's the commonality? And it was always such a good question. And so I spent time diving into that to figure out, what is the commonality? And as it turns out, and of course, there's a lot of things I could have landed on. So I'll admit that my bias drew me to this. But it was that they're all seeking their joy in some way, shape, or form after the hardship, or as they are envisioning a goal or something that they want in their lives, they're all striving towards a place of joy. So that became the focus of my research because I wanted to understand what that looks like, and how people even conceptualize joy. One of the things that I was kind of shocked to discover when I was interviewing people about joy, asking how they experience joy or what they do to pursue their joy, I had some real pushback because the question was triggering for them. How do they find their joy? Because I think now in hindsight, I understand that question is a very leading an assumptive question. Like, I'm assuming people pursue their joy. And I remember one particular interview, and the response was, I don't really want to even do this study because I have no joy right now, and I'm not pursuing joy. I'm going through a divorce. It's just not something I want to talk about right now. And that hit me. And it occurred to me that if I ask people about their pain, maybe they'll be more open to talk. And that's exactly what happened. So I started from a place of pain and I asked, how do you deal with the pain? How do you find comfort or relief? And lo and behold, they started talking about joy. So I kind of, went on the back end and figured it out that way. So
Joy won
after,
out. Would you say
what'd you
joy
say?
won out?
Right. It's just, and we're just so much more familiar with pain. And it's in fact, and I wish I knew what book I read this in. I think it was it might have been The Joy of Pain. Um, that we're so much more familiar with our pain that we actually almost trust it more because we trust it to be there. We trust it to be consistent if it's something that's, chronic. But with joy, we fear that it's going to leave us. We fear that if we allow ourselves to hold on to it too tightly, we're going to get hurt. So, um, so from that work, I developed a multidimensional framework of joy, and the framework has the four components: well-being being the foundation, and then integration and connection, sort of being sort of the they respond to how you're to your state of well-being. So integration means, how do you integrate joy? How do you practice joy? Connection are who the people around you and what do those relationships look like? So considering where your well-being is, it's going to inform how you practice joy. Um, it's going to inform who you connect with and how you connect with those people. So as we look at integration and connection, you see at the bottom here is liberation. And to the extent that our practices of joy are healthy and consistent, and that our communities are nurturing that joy, we are able to get to a place where we can experience liberation, where we can initiate liberation. And that is the primary purpose of this presentation here, is how, as coaches, can we help our clients get to a place of liberation during their plot twist moment, after their plot twist moment? How do we help them create change in their life that will, again, nurture their well-being? So that's essentially the foundation behind this work today. So if we look at the impact of joy in our work, and I could look at the impact of joy in general in our families. Yes. Were you
Oh,
going to
no,
say something?
no, I'm reading the slide.
Oh, okay. So, so as we, I could look at the impact of joy in a lot of different facets of our lives, but I'm going to focus in on work for this particular conversation, or this slide, really. But this is kind of what some of the research has said about this. So, in terms of productivity, happy employees are 12% more productive, while unhappy employees are 10% less productive. Um, Positive emotions invigorate employees, boosts their focus and their working memory, and their ability to complete tasks effectively, efficiently. So this is something you would think employers would say, okay, we want our employees to be happy. And remember, happiness is contentment. They're not feeling threatened. They're at peace. They're feeling safe. And so happiness is a great thing. And if it's something that we can create in the workplace, these are the results that we may be able to see. In terms of retention and engagement, joyful employees are more likely to stay with their organizations and be fully engaged in their roles. High levels of disengagement lead to increased turnover, which has financial and cultural costs to the organization. For anybody who has been following what's been going on here in the United States, following the 2025 presidential inauguration, there have been instant and mass firings, and people are on edge. And this is an era where coaching is going to be really important because everybody doesn't necessarily need therapy, after what's happened over the last 2 weeks. Some will. But a lot of us are going to need coaching to figure out, how do I strategize around this environment? What do I need to do? How do I process what I'm experiencing? And what we're likely to see is a decline in what this second block is pointing out. Joyful employees being more likely to stay with their organizations. And so we might see an opposite. We're not sure what's going to happen. And then mental health and well-being, experiencing uplifting emotions like joy helps build resilience. It helps to reduce stress and it enhances well-being. And similarly, joy and strong connections are essential to long-term health and life satisfaction. So the idea of what we're talking about today is not just temporary happiness or feeling good. It is long-term health and life satisfaction, which in psychology, we call this flourishing. So the idea is that we want to help our clients get to a place of flourishing. We know that we're not therapists. So what is it that we could do within our profession to assist with that flourishing? Let's see. So if we look at the decline in well-being, and there's been a lot of studies and articles and conversations around decline in well-being, especially after 2020 and the pandemic. And we started seeing declines in well-being, of course, with physical health, but also just psychologically. So during the pandemic, 89% of the people reported that their work-life balance had worsened, and it led to higher rates of burnout and stress. Emotional well-being, nearly 42% of survey participants indicated a significant decline in their emotional well-being, with loneliness and anxiety becoming prevalent. Loneliness is what psychologists are saying is the new pandemic. People are isolated. There is definitely some side effects of having to isolate ourselves so that we don't get sick. And there are people who are still doing that to some extent, not fully necessarily, but just psychologically distancing themselves from other people. And then finally, you have mental health and well-being. A lack of joy can lead to increased stress, burnout, and emotional exhaustion. And so our role isn't necessarily to, predict the future and tell our clients what, could possibly happen, but we could help them build what's called psychological flexibility and to understand how they are psychologically processing the plot twists that they may be facing in their life, and to give themselves grace and to not be so hard on the emotions that they're feeling, but to actually turn those emotions into something that they can honor and pay attention to and allow to be a part of the process. I know a lot of times people say, don't make emotional decisions. And it's not that you need to make an emotional decision, but to acknowledge the emotions and understanding how that's impacting you is going to be an important part of the emotional process or the strategic process. So understanding the nature of plot twists. So a plot twist can be anything from a job that forces a career pivot, a relationship ending, leading to deeper self-discovery. So any kind of relationship. I've had a lot of friendships, interestingly, in the last few years that just exploded, and I'm like, what happened? Like, I don't know what happened. And so there's some heartbreak that happens in those kinds of situations as well, or a health scare that reframes, what might truly matter to us. So what I'm going to do is show a video, and it is going to it's a little emotional. So just, a little bit of a trigger warning. It's not terrible, but it's a little emotional. But it's fighting to flourish after the plot twist. So this is what it looks like. This is not a joyful video. This is what it looks like when people are experiencing their plot twist.
Sam couldn't believe what was happening. With no notice, he lost his job that day. After so many years, suddenly, none of it mattered. On the other side of town, Annalisa wondered where she and her son could possibly go. Precious family memories now all packed away. She reassured him that it was going to be okay. Isabella was crushed by the news. Financial aid denied. She had worked so hard, but it wasn't enough. Adonis couldn't believe what he was seeing. Just when he had begun to have hope, decades of progress crumbling on the screen. He worried about what this meant for the future. He simply couldn't watch anymore, but he couldn't seem to let himself look away. Rima asked the doctor about her options. Stunned, but determined, she reminded herself that she could do this, that she had to. The hardest part was sharing the news with her daughter. Dinesh reflected on 20 years of building this business and a now uncertain future. It was an unbearable reality that this was really the end. With a heavy heart, he locked up the shop one last time. Sam was overwhelmed by what it might mean to start over. Annalisa hoped that she and her son could get through this together. Isabella wondered what she might be able to do about her education. Adonis believed there must be something he could do. Rima decided to take it one day at a time. Dinesh didn't know how he could possibly rebuild what he lost.
All right. So intentionally ended that with a little bitty spark of hope, like maybe that look meant something is changing and their new plot twist was going to happen. But one thing that I want you to think about after watching that is, what these stories mean to you as a coach. What does it mean to you as a human being? To what extent can does this resonate with your own experience or your experience with your clients? I will say that I have had these stories all reflect what has been said to me in the last 2 weeks by either clients or friends or somebody that I know of. But I have been having, as a coach, endless conversations with people who are terrified, who don't know where to turn, who don't know where to go next. And again, somebody like as Isabella's situation doesn't necessarily need therapy because she didn't get her financial aid, but she's distraught, she's terrified, and she needs to figure out what's next. And there's going to be some trauma built into that because if we understand some of the challenges that are going on with higher education and financial aid and even immigration status, if we look at that aspect of a student life, that can be quite scary and quite traumatizing. So these are our real fears and things that are happening with people in this time. So now I want to talk about the counter plot twist. What does it look like then when we take situations like that and we flip them, or we build ourselves on the backs of those situations? So touching on the idea of a trauma-informed coach, or trauma-informed coaching approach, let me say, because I don't want to suggest that we all need to become trauma-informed coaches, but I do think that it's important for us to have a couple of tools under our belt so that we can at least recognize it and respond accordingly. So the first one of 3 here is recognizing the signs of trauma response in clients. So we might have this avoidance. We might have emotional overwhelm. We saw that with Adonis in the video, watching the TV and sort of being, and also hypervigilant, just really overwhelmed with it. And thinking as from the standpoint of a coach, and if we had more time, I would love to like break out into discussions and, how are we going to work with each of these clients? But if I think about Adonis, one of the first things I would want to learn from him is how it's impacting him to have this constant sort of B-roll of news happening before him, and what it might look like if he considered other strategies, and what might those strategies be. So recognize those signs of trauma. Using coaching to stabilize. So before we dive into strategies and solutions, and how do we stabilize them? How do we help them to breathe, to ground themselves, to get themselves to a place where they're not in fight, flight, fawn mode? They are in a state of mind where they are not fighting for their life or fearing for their life, but they are calm. So what kinds of things can we do to help our clients do that? And the third aspect of trauma-informed approach would be, and what I forgot to mention before any of these three, was trust. I mean, that, I don't want to just say like it's obvious, but that's important. We have to build the trust before we can do these. And so the last one is encouraging self-compassion and agency. So meaning, these are two different things, but the self-compassion, not being so hard on yourself for the emotions that you're experiencing, honoring those emotions, having compassion with yourself. Of course I'm angry. Of course I'm crying. Of course I'm afraid. And if I wasn't those things, I think we might need to be concerned, because I am having a natural human response to an event that's very difficult. So I should be feeling these things. And the other one is the sense of control. I once worked with an organization that pairs formerly incarcerated citizens with those who are still incarcerated. And so those who are formerly incarcerated, they're going through a training and sort of learning coaching and mentoring skills to support people who are still incarcerated. I was part of the training for this group, and one gentleman, all of their stories were just striking, but one gentleman was telling the story of how when he was a teenager, he was in a gang and he was kidnapped and tied up, bound, and put in a basement, and does not know where he was, whose basement he was in, only could imagine that he might be dead soon, blindfolded. And he said what got him through that really scary time was that he decided in his own mind that he has a sense of control. He can control what he thinks. He can control the music that goes through his head. He can control the praise that, he wants to, spiritually acknowledge that I am still here. So he did all of those things while bound in the chair, blindfolded, and had no idea what was going to happen to him, but felt this amazing sense of control and agency, even in that moment. So whether or not we are physically bound or we are psychologically bound, helping our clients find their own agency in those situations can be extremely liberating and empowering. But we need to also remember that we have some basic needs. And there's a lot of different psychological theories that talk about our three psychological needs. I love Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, autonomy, relatedness, and competence. But this is looking at a different framework, which is about the power of being seen and heard. And so we have a natural need to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. And so from a coaching standpoint, when somebody is going through the things that they're going through, especially if we see a different possibility for them, or maybe we've been through it ourselves, we might say, oh, yeah, there's so many different things you can do here, and yeah, you guys lost your home, but there's so many options, and here's what you can do. First and foremost, let that client be seen. And allow them to be seen for where they are in that moment, for who they are in that moment. And then allow that client to be heard. What are they feeling? What are the words that they actually need to hear themselves say? And recognize those words. And then finally acknowledging them. And so acknowledging any steps that they're taking forward, acknowledging that they're sitting here right now, acknowledging that they've just taken a breath. How can we acknowledge them? And this is how we can get to a place of strategy once we're able to kind of address those basic needs. So the impact of being ignored, which is the opposite of that, there's research that shows that first and foremost, it hurts. Even if people don't act like it hurts, it hurts. It actually instigates behavior that's meant to recover your existence. And so it could be schadenfreude. It could be that whole, I'm going to do things that are going to cause pain to other people and it's going to bring me joy because now I'm seen. Um, so the behaviors can look a whole lot of different ways depending on what the situation is and who the person is. And then people who are ignored do things that can't be ignored. And so whether it is they just go into themselves and they are extremely quiet, or if they are just rambunctious and just over the top, obnoxious, people who get on our nerves, those are behaviors often that are done so that they can't be ignored. And they don't necessarily always know that they're doing this, but these are things that from a coach's perspective, we might be able to recognize if we understand that this is what happens. So the positive impacts of being seen and heard leads to social attentiveness and pro-social behavior. It results in acceptance, validation, and connection. And this can be self-acceptance, and it can also be acceptance from those whose acceptance matters. And then it's necessary to feel like we matter. And mattering is really important if we're going to be strategic. If it doesn't matter, we're not going to be strategic. So how can we make sure our clients understand that they matter? This really mirrors one of my other favorite researchers, Tedeschi and Calhoun, who coined the idea of post-traumatic growth. And the idea is that we grow after, or we can grow, we don't always grow, but we can grow after traumatic experiences. In order to grow after traumatic experiences, we have to have a sense of openness to new experiences, which this is, I think, speaks to that first block, leads to social attentiveness and pro-social behavior. And what also speaks to that block is that we have to have some moments of extroversion. And believe it or not, I am not an extrovert. And so I'm on this new football team and I am the one like, I know that one person, I'm going to talk to them the whole time. And so, but what post-traumatic growth requires is not that you're an extrovert, but that you have moments of extroversion so that you can make those connections with people. And then the other one is that you are, oh gosh, what was the third one? I lost track. So we have, optimism. And so you have openness to new experiences, you have moments of extroversion, and you have a sense of optimism. So it's not like I have somebody in my life, and I will not name them, always gloom and doom, always go, oh, it's going to go down. This is it. Oh, World War II starting tomorrow, and it's just like, that's not helpful. I'm not going, why would I strategize if it's all going to just end anyway? So in my personal opinion, we have to get out of that mindset if we want to move forward. And so from a coaching standpoint, how can we help our clients experience new things, have moments of extroversion, and experience optimism as they're moving forward? So what I'm introducing here is the epic joy approach. And this is grounded in that multidimensional framework of joy. That multidimensional framework of joy is a theoretical concept. The epic joy approach is the practical application of that concept. So there's 4 principles. And the first one, and I don't call it eudaimonia because nobody's going to remember that, but I love the word so much that I came up with another E that means the same thing, which is establishing well-being. So the E is for eudaimonia, if you want to use that word, or establishing well-being. And I have an actual, I want to read the definition of eudaimonia so that I say it correctly. I have it here in my notes. Where is it? I skipped it. Okay, here we go. So it is a Greek word that means human flourishing. And the philosopher Aristotle used it as a broad concept to describe the highest good humans could strive toward, or a life well lived. And I love that because it is the idea that a life well lived is in service to others, but it's also in service to ourselves. So it takes care of our well-being as well as the well-being of others. And there is no better word for me to this point. If anybody has one, let me know. This one, when this came up in the literature, I was like, this is it. This describes exactly what I have seen. And so the coaching strategies that go with this can be identify what well-being means for the client. So you don't want to put it on them. Develop small, consistent well-being habits. So it doesn't have to be a big thing, but what are some of the small things you can do? And then create resilience buffers. So sometimes that's people. Sometimes that is distancing yourself from certain situations, giving yourself time to process. So those are ways to nurture well-being, but there are so many other ways. So what ideas can your client come up with? Can you two come up with together that align with who they are? Principle number 2 is for people. So that's a little bit easier to remember. And the idea is that we are positioning people, meaning, and I have a communities of joy model, and that really kind of helps us map out how we position who's in our lives, who gets to be closest to us, and then who do we need to be aware of that are within our circle or our atmosphere that might be threats to our joy. So just being aware of who those people are and positioning them appropriately. So this might look like, from a coaching standpoint, helping them assess who in their life supports their joy and their growth. I will add to this who takes that away. That's important to know. That's there, and who drains their energy. So knowing this is going to help us protect and continue to create our joy. Number 3 is for integration. And so this is integrating joy practices, and what specific strategies are we going to put into place to create this joy? And this can, and for this, there, I also have a model for this as well. Each one of these can be their own presentation. But that model lays out the 4 practices of joy, and that covers the the ethos of joy, meaning, and that acts of kindness falls into that. Who are we? Who's the heart, at the heart of who we are, and what do we value, and how do we live out our joy from that standpoint? The other one is the expression of joy. There's also the experience of joy, and there is the I'm trying to remember. It's 4 E's. And so the expression, the ethos, the emotion, the main one that everybody thinks joy is, the emotion of joy. And so those are 4 different ways that we can integrate joy into our lives. And so for some clients, the ethos might be the most important to them. I want to serve. I want to show love. I want to be there for somebody. So perhaps the strategizing that you all do around the joy practices can focus more on the ethos. Maybe for some people, it's more about bodily expression. Like, I want to dance. I want to do things that just allow me to move my body. And so that might be the expression of joy. So for some, it could be all 4 of them, but how do you help them integrate joy in a way that is true to who they are? And then the last one is change. It's revolutionary change. And I am very intentional about the word revolutionary. And this was the circle that was on the bottom of that model that was looking at, I think it was called change. But the reason why this is so important is because, again, if we are doing what we need to do in terms of our well-being, and then we're connecting with our communities in a healthy way, we're integrating joy in a healthy way, we position ourselves to be able to create revolutionary change. Now, again, revolutionary is important here because what happens anytime we've seen a revolution happen anywhere in the world, it is for one of 2 reasons. Because they are fighting for a joy that they want to have in their lives, or they are fighting for a joy that once existed that they no longer have. So we create revolutions because we are seeking to find our joy. Now, if we are seeking revolutions from a place of low well-being, meaning we are not practicing joy, we are around some really toxic people, the revolutions that we create thinking we're seeking our joy is going to be a revolution that hurts other people. And I think we have seen some of that happening in the world. So sometimes we wonder, why is this happening? And it all comes back to well-being. You cannot convince me that people who create revolutions that hurt other people are fully well. So getting back to the positive aspect of it, we can help our clients create their own personal revolutions in their own lives. If we look at the situation with the woman who had the diagnosis, what is it she's able to do from where she is that can create a revolution in her life? No matter what that diagnosis is, what specific strategy can she create for her own life, depending on, what she desires. So those revolutions can be as small as something that impacts your own life, or as grand as something that, changes a society. So this is how powerful the practice of joy can be. So setting the stage, three things that's important to remember. We need to be aware of our joy gaps. Where's the joy missing? What's going on? How do we address those gaps? And this is where coaching is super important, because we have, this is our skill set, help people discover and identify gaps. And I have a worksheet that helps us do that. A permission to embody joy. So many people that I talked to they felt guilty. They felt like, if I express joy while everybody else is in pain, and mind you, I was doing a lot of these interviews during COVID, during the pandemic. And so there was a lot of guilt for the people who were experiencing joy. They didn't want to say it too loudly. And then interestingly, there was, and I think maybe in response to that, there was a hashtag that was going around on all the social media called Black Male Joy, and Black men frolicking, because Black men were like, wait a minute, I can frolic in the field, and just like, whoa, this is interesting. And it became a trend because people were giving themselves permission to embody joy. And then the last one is access to agency. So that agency, meaning I have the wherewithal to make this happen. And how can we help people see that for themselves? So the worksheets that I have, which were not these, again, this is a session all in and of itself, but helping people identify where they are in these growth zones. There's 3 zones here. We have the joyful zone, the neutral zone, the distress zone. And the idea is, where is your normal? Where are you stable? And what does that feel like? And what does that look like? So having the client be able to describe that to you, and then having conversations about, what does it look like when you're climbing up that ladder? Where have you experienced a sense of acceptance and self-belief and hope? And on the other hand, when have you experienced loneliness or self-doubt or hopelessness? So, and so let's talk about where you are now and what it's going to take to get you to where you want to be. This other one is, I'm going to show you the blank page first, but this is initially was developed for careers, but I have since received a lot of feedback that this is just helpful in all areas of life. But the idea is that these are the zones of agency. So you've got change by force. So maybe, and like I said, when I was talking about employment with this, am I changing jobs by force? Am I changing positions by force? Am I changing by choice? Am I staying by force, or am I staying by choice? So if I'm changing by force, that puts me in the languishing zone. If I'm changing by choice, that puts me in the liberated zone. If I'm staying by force, I'm in the conflicted zone. And if I'm staying by choice, I'm invigorated. I'm here because I want to be here. So if we look at each one of those, again, if we had time, we'd go into like little spaces and we'd discuss this. But as we think about the different situations that we watched in that video, where might each one of them be in terms of their zone of agency. And how can you help them as a coach find greater agency in their situation? This is, what it looks like filled in. So this is just giving people an idea of what it might feel like to be in a situation where you are changing by force or where you are staying by choice. Just some prompts to kind of help people think about how they might describe where they are. And then the last worksheet is epic joy strategies for coaches. So it comes blank, and coaches have the opportunity to work with clients to say, okay, so what kinds of things would you like to do to establish your well-being? Let's come up with some strategies around that. How might you position people? How might you integrate joy? How might you create change? And this is what it looks like if it was filled in, that maybe somebody said, well, from a coach's standpoint, maybe I'll because they said they wanted to be more mindful. So I'll encourage mindfulness, self-care routines, stress management techniques, whatever comes out of that conversation, is what you would put into these different squares. So in conclusion, wanting you to think about where in your life you've experienced a plot twist that ultimately led to growth. In other words, where have you experienced a plot twist that gave you an opportunity to create a counter plot twist? And how might the Epic Joy framework help your clients? And finally, what is one takeaway that you can implement in your coaching or in your life right away? Now, I have no idea how this football thing is going to turn out. None. I might make it through a season. I might quit after the first game. I don't know. But I am open, and I'm not, married to whatever the outcome is. I am just enjoying the moment, which is something I absolutely need in times like this, where sometimes it's good to take my mind off of all the things that are going on.
Yeah.
So that is all I have. Oh, and in conclusion, uncertainty is inevitable, but joy is still possible. Coaching can be a tool for transformation, and small intentional actions create sustainable flourishing. So that is all. And all of the graphics and things that I have throughout the presentation are available through that QR code. I have them all available as downloadable documents. So that is it. Thank you so much.
Wow. Fabulous. Thank you. I enjoyed that. That's the first time I've seen this part of what you are doing. Because
Very
I've
cool.
not seen your graphs before, and I've not heard you speak. We use the language around revolutionary and epic, and so I mean, it's like, yeah, there's Pamela. She's jazzing it up.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. I love the colors. You're very colorful. This is wonderful, and really practical too. And I know you didn't speak directly to ethics, but it was all foundational to everything that you were showing us. So
Yeah.
that's what I love about what we can bring to the forum, is that ethics just underpins it all, and we could start arguing it all left, right, and center. But
Yeah.
for me, it was traveling through all of that.
And
So,
I debated how much I wanted to directly go into the ethics, and knowing that when we're talking about plot twists and in this context, the ethics are almost unquestionable. Like, we know people are being mistreated and disregarded. And, so as a coach, how do we help counter what's going on there?
mm.
That's really what people are asking me. What do we do? How do we address this largely unethical situation from a coaching standpoint?
And that's the thing. So that makes you then question, when people are asking this question, is it that they're asking us to intervene? Is it they're asking us to direct? Or is it that we really need to be coming to the place of just being there with them and allowing them to express and experience whatever's going on at the moment, given some of the chaos that's around the world?
Right.
that maybe that's enough for that particular moment. And we don't have to do any more than that other than to be there with them.
Yes. I've found that,
And,
yeah.
and so it will process.
I've found that I have to allow myself to let that be okay from a coaching standpoint, even if they're not asking me to save them. I have to be okay with just being there with them and listening to them is doing a lot. So yes. So even as coaches, even if we might be asking ourselves the question, what can we do? How can we save the world? What's our position here? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I really enjoyed that.
Thank
And,
you.
so hopefully we'll see you again during the year.
Yes.
Something.
Absolutely. Well, and hopefully if people watch the recording, they're free to reach out and, I can answer questions that people may have.
Great. Thank you. But